You look at the painting and her smile seems to have a life of its own. It appears and disappears. This is the main mystery of the Mona Lisa. Her smile seems to play with you, hiding in the shadows and then suddenly becoming apparent. How did Leonardo da Vinci achieve this effect? He used an unusual technique for his time called sfumato. Instead of clear lines, the artist made soft transitions of light and shadow. To create sfumato, Leonardo applied up to 30 thin layers of paint. It took years, but allowed to make the smile alive. There is no obvious outline on Mona Lisa's smile, so the viewer's eye clings to different details depending on the angle of view. When you look at her eyes, it seems that she is smiling, but when you look at her lips, the smile disappears. This liveliness of the smile still fascinates artists and scientists. They even tried to measure its effect. In 2005, researchers used a computer to assess the emotional perception of the Mona Lisa's smile and found that it expresses 83% happiness, 9% contempt, 6% fear, and 2% anger. That is, one picture can cause a whole spectrum of emotions. With the help of modern technology, they found out that originally Mona Lisa's smile was wider, but Da Vinci gradually changed it to create the effect of mystery. But the mysteries of the smile are not limited to the smile. Scientists have noticed that there are subtle symbols in Mona Lisa's eyes. For example, in the right eye found the letters L and V, perhaps the initials of Leonardo himself. And in the left eye hidden obscure signs that have not yet been solved. There is a version that this is the key to understanding who is actually depicted in the portrait. Coming up next, we'll reveal who's behind this most famous image in history. Who is she, this mysterious woman whose face millions of people stare at? Many are convinced that she is Lisa Gherardini, the wife of a wealthy silk merchant from Florence. But is it that simple? Or is it a composite image created by a genius? In the archives, there are records that confirm that Lisa Gherardini really lived in Florence in the early 16th century. She was the wife of Francesco del Giocondo, a respected merchant. It was he, according to historians, who commissioned a portrait of his wife in honor of the birth of their second son. Back then, portraits were a status symbol, much like expensive cars or designer clothes are now. The family wanted to show that they could afford to hire a great artist, Leonardo da Vinci himself. This portrait was to decorate their home and become a source of pride. Archives showed that Lisa Gherardini died in the convent where she spent the last years of her life, but there was no trace of the painting in her family. But this begs the question, why did the painting never reach the customer? Some believe that Leonardo simply did not want to give it away. He continued to work on the portrait for years, improving every detail. Not all researchers are sure that in front of us, only Lisa Gherardini. Her facial features seem perfect, high cheekbones, thin nose, soft oval face. This has led scientists to assume that Leonardo added the features of other people to the real image. For example, some think that the artist was inspired by his young student, Salai, with whom he had a close relationship. There is also a more daring version. Leonardo added something of himself to Mona Lisa's facial features. This theory explains why the portrait looks so unusual. It combines male and female features. Next, we will tell you where Mona Lisa is looking and why her gaze seems alive. Have you ever noticed that the Mona Lisa seems to be watching you? No matter what angle you look at her from, her eyes seem to be pointed directly at you. This gaze effect is still debated and admired today. But how did Leonardo da Vinci create this illusion? The secret of her gaze lies in the way Leonardo used light and shadow. He masterfully distributed the highlights in the eyes and made their shapes slightly blurred. As a result, when you look at the Mona Lisa, your brain makes up the details, making the look seem alive. It's like a photograph of a person. If the light falls on the eyes at a certain angle, they seem to be following you. Leonardo realized this effect 400 years before the camera was invented. He calculated the light transitions so finely that the heroine's gaze comes to life even if you're standing to the side. Scientists discovered that the angle of her gaze was deliberately calculated. Leonardo calibrated everything to create the feeling that the painting moves behind the viewer. This is not an accident, but an elaborate illusion. This illusion is what makes the painting special. Unlike conventional portraits, the Mona Lisa seems to interact with you. It draws your attention. You don't just look at her. You feel that she is looking back at you. Have you ever wondered what lies beneath the colors of masterpieces? Modern technology allows us to literally look inside paintings. In the case of the Mona Lisa, the results are surprising. It turns out that the painting we see is not what it was originally intended to be. Infrared scanning revealed that Leonardo changed the pose of the Mona Lisa's hands several times. Originally, her fingers were positioned differently, with her left hand resting on the armrest. This means that Leonardo was contemplating how to make the pose as natural as possible. To understand how difficult this is, imagine you are painting a portrait of a friend. Every slightest change in the pose is weeks or even months of redrawing details, how the fabric lies, where the light falls. Leonardo worked on Mona Lisa for more than 4 years, and even then he did not consider it finished. With the help of the same technology, it turned out that the background of the painting was also rewritten. At first, it was more realistic, with sharp details reminiscent of a rural landscape. But later, Leonardo replaced it with a misty space, resembling a fantasy world. For the 16th century, this was an incredibly strange solution. Usually the backgrounds of portraits were real. They could be houses, gardens, or mountains. But Leonardo wanted the viewer to feel a certain mystery, as if the heroine was outside of reality. Why did this particular painting, out of thousands of other masterpieces, become a symbol of art? In fact, the Mona Lisa wasn't always so famous. Her path to world fame began with one unexpected and, at first glance, unpleasant story. In 1911, the Mona Lisa disappeared from the Louvre. It turned out that it was stolen by the former guard of the museum, Italian Vincenzo Peruggia. He claimed that he wanted to return the painting to his homeland, Italy, as he believed that it was unfairly taken from the country. The theft caused a huge scandal. The Mona Lisa became the talk of newspapers around the world. People lined up to the blank wall where the painting used to hang to see the scene of the crime. When the Mona Lisa was found 2 years later, its popularity grew by leaps and bounds. The painting inspired not only ordinary people, but also great artists. For example, Salvador Dalí once painted a self-portrait in the image of the Mona Lisa and ironically called it L.G. Darwin. This caused a stir, and even those who had never been to a museum learned about Leonardo's masterpiece. Her image appeared on T-shirts, postcards, advertisements. In the 20th century, the Mona Lisa became the first work of art that literally went to the people. Now she is not just a picture, but part of mass culture, like movie characters or famous brands. Mona Lisa has become a symbol of mystery. Her enigmatic smile and gaze attract millions of visitors to the Louvre every year. About 30,000 people visit the Mona Lisa per day. To protect the painting, it is placed behind bulletproof glass, and during World War II it was hidden several times in different places to protect it from the Nazis. So why are people willing to stand for hours to see it? Perhaps the secret is that it looks into everyone's soul.